So real quickly, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to show you more or less overview, or a map rather, of the areas that I'm talking about. So like I mentioned before, I got this map from Google Earth and I plotted out more or less where things and historical events or markers happened or occurred. So over here on this dot right there was Fort Oswego. And again, it's on that hill by that tree line and the factory. Then down here by the river was Fort George, over where those towers are, and the current port of Oswego. Right here is where we are right now. This is Fort Ontario. And then this white line is where the French army would have been on August 13th, 1756. So again, it extends from about the parking lot down through the baseball and softball fields, and then right about to where one of those main buildings are by the parking lot, the main parking lot rather. This blue line here in the center is the French advance from their campsite towards Fort Ontario. The funny thing about this road, rather, is that there's a modern road that follows roughly the same pathway as the French advance in 1756. Over here is St. Paul's Cemetery, and I was right up here at the top of the hill. And then over here is Wine Creek, where the French landed in 1756. Like I said, that's private property, so unfortunately I'm not able to get very close to the beach where the French would have actually landed in 1756. Some other things that I have are historical maps. So here we have a map from a British person, Thomas Sowers, who was an engineer in 1760. We have here, this was Fort Oswego. Down here is Fort George. Right, trying to give you a good view. This is Fort Ontario, again rebuilt in 1759 to look like what we see today. And then while it's very difficult to tell, there's this little road that goes from Wine Creek, or modern day Wine Creek, past what would become St. Paul's Cemetery, and then all the way to the fort. That road is the road that the French took to attack Fort Ontario. And then here we have the battle lines of the French against Fort Ontario. So they came from here, there's a little road right there. This yellow line going from the top of the coast down here is where the French established their battery against the fort on August 13th. And then again, the British abandoned it, and the French took it back over. Then, like I mentioned, they established a second battery, or second or more cannon, against Fort George down here. This would have been the position of the French battery. See how it follows the lines of the fort and then extends out a little bit more. That would have been on that coastline where I was by the American flag. And then again, Fort George. And then Fort Oswego over here with the added additions in 1755. Before, in the early 18th century, it was just a log fortification, but then they added to it with ramparts and ditches to make it look like what we see on this map from, I believe, 1756, or roughly around there. Then this is the evolution of the fort, like I showed you before. Here we have the fort from 1755 to 1756. You see there's a square in the center with triangles poking out of each side to give it added protection, so the soldiers could get to these triangular parts and shoot down at the people who are along these walls here, with the original entrance being along this area here. And then in 1759, 1760, the British rebuilt or added to the fort, made it into more or less what we see today. And then, of course, this is the 1839, 1842 reconstruction of the fort. We see the iconic star formation, and then, of course, the 4 interior buildings, and the modern-day entrance would have been, which is right there. Alright, and then these images over here give you an idea of, the fortifications that were established. So here you have the wall, then you have the rampart rather, then you have the brick wall along the side with the casements, so soldiers can shoot out directly, and then of course the land. And then this shows you what it looks like with a casement. So here's just grass and earth. Here they have the casement. Soldiers would be inside this area here, and from these sort of windows, or what could be compared to a modern day arrow slit, they could shoot their muskets or whatever towards the enemy trying to attack. Alright. And then of course 1760 version, you don't have the casements, but you do have the ramparts, this I believe wooden wall on top to give it some added protection to the interior buildings, which were obviously much lower than what we see today. And then the ditch, and then the earth, and then same thing in 1756. You have the wall on top, you have buildings that are lower than the wall, the ditch, and then the earth, or the plateau where the French army would have attacked from. Alright,